Hello, Mr. Withers. Welcome back to my living room. Today I am going to talk about an urgent and steady worsening issue in the healthcare system, the rise of abuse against healthcare workers. This includes verbal harassment, physical violence, bullying within institutions, and even targeted attacks in global conflict zones. Across multiple kinds of data, government reports, national surveys, professional studies, and international monitoring, the conclusion is the same. Healthcare worker abuse is worse now than in the past and does continue to rise. Uh, Large organizations like the World Health Organization and the Bureau of Labor Statistics report that a majority of healthcare workers experience some form of workplace violence, especially nurses and frontline staff. Verbal threats, intimidation, and aggressive behavior have become routine parts of the job. National surveys show that more than 80% of nurses experienced at least one violent incident in the past year. What used to be occasional outbursts has become a constant expectation in many hospitals. This tells us that the everyday environment in healthcare has become more fundamentally dangerous. Not only are the violent incidents becoming more common, they are becoming more physically harmful. Recent injury data shows that healthcare workers now experience more intentional physical injuries than workers in any other American industry. Studies also highlight a rise in serious assaults causing concussions, fractures, and trauma that require medical treatment or extended time away from work. In other words, the issue is not just frequency, it's the severity. Attacks are more forceful, more injurious, and more disruptive to a worker's physical and mental health. The COVID-19 pandemic did play a role in this. Hospital staff were overwhelmed, exhausted, and families were desperate. These pressures created the perfect condition for conflict. Healthcare workers were harassed over mask rules, vaccinations, visitation limits, and other political arguments about public health. Many hospitals reported sharp spikes in threats and aggression through the pandemic, and these levels did not return to normal afterward. Instead, the stress and hostility are carried forward into the post-pandemic care setting. A major reason abuse continues to rise is systematic understaffing. Hospitals are short-staffed, patients wait longer, receive less communication, or are becoming more frustrated. The frustration often escalates towards the nurses and staff who are just trying to manage impossible workloads. Emergency departments and psychiatric units, the most crowded and understaffed areas, have the highest rates of violent incidents. This shows a direct connection between resource shortages and increased risk. Abuse isn't just coming from patients. Many healthcare workers report lateral violence, bullying, harassment, and intimidation from other coworkers or supervisors. This kind of internal hostility is often overlooked, but can be just as harmful. Toxic workplace cultures make it harder for staff to report crimes, set boundaries, or feel supported. Combined with the external violence and the internal abuse creates a system that feels unsafe from every direction. Internationally, violence against healthcare workers has expanded dramatically. In war zones, thousands of attacks have been documented against medical workers, ambulances, and hospitals. Bombings, arrests, kidnappings, and blockades targeting healthcare have reached the highest levels ever recorded. And this represents an extremely important part of the global trend. Healthcare workers are increasingly treated as targets rather than protective professionals. Rising abuse has serious ripple effects. Burnout and trauma, higher turnover, and shorter staffing levels, increased errors and reduced care quality, and lower morale and loss of experienced workers. Violence doesn't just harm individuals, it weakens the entire healthcare system. Because of rising violence, lawmakers and professional organizations are proposing solutions. Stronger penalties for assaults on healthcare workers, better staffing levels, expanded security protocols, mandatory reporting systems, and mental health support for affected workers. But policy changes alone aren't enough. We need cultural change, where as a society we recognize that healthcare workers deserve safety, respect, and protection. In conclusion, healthcare worker abuse is getting worse. Not only more common, but more severe, more varied, and more costly. Government data, academic research, and frontline testimony all point to the same troubling reality. The people who keep our healthcare system functioning are increasingly unsafe at work. If we want a strong healthcare system, we must protect the people who care for us. That means staffing hospitals properly, addressing toxic internal cultures, supporting legislative protections, and creating environments where healthcare workers can do their jobs without fear. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.